I'm only ever interested in taking on a leadership role. And I've been in multiple, but this one in particular, where, I was only interested if I knew we were going to work together as a team and go forward as a team, because as an individual, you can't make an impact. I'm also ironically a little bit, people wouldn't know this about me, but I'm a little bit shy to have myself out there in front of that big of an audience. I like to kind of lead from the side or behind and let other people shine. And I knew stepping into this role, I would probably be more of a public face than I had been in my other roles. So that was a little bit of a
Sure.
challenge for me to get past as well.
I'm excited about this podcast for two reasons. First one, this is my first, I would say, official PEI guest. I did have Bonnie Stewart on back in August of last year, and she's a native PEI, but she lives in Ontario and she practices education in Ontario. So this is the first person who's doing the work in Prince Edward Island. And the second reason is because Tracy is awesome. I just so enjoyed her humility, vulnerability, and just heartfelt desire to do the right things for children and her colleagues. And so that comes shining through. As she was speaking and sharing her journey and her perspectives, I was doing a lot of inside, yay, yes, 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 because I think she gets it. I think she really gets it. And so really, really proud to share this conversation with get this right, the director of the public schools branch. They're the only English board in Prince Edward Island. They cover the whole island. The director of the public schools branch, Tracy Beaulieu. The last time we chatted, I think it was in November, you were in a interim or temporary role, but that's changed. So first of all, tell me about that decision that you made to say, I want to take this on a little bit more permanently.
Sure. So the position title is Director of the Public Schools Branch, and it's a title like some say superintendent, but essentially the CEO of the
Effort.
organization. And we are the English school board. We do have a French district as well, but we are the English school board and have about 56 schools. The decision was not easy to make. It's a big role and a big responsibility to take on, but I have been surrounded by some great people who were very encouraging. And I thought, you know what, I'll take this on for a couple of years because I know I have amazing supports around me and we can work on this together and lead together. So it was a little bit of a back and forth decision,
Yeah.
but in the end I thought, you know what, let's do it.
Well, it's interesting when you say that, Tracy, because a lot of people in your role in not just Canada, but in the US where I work, who come into a new situation to either be a savior or change or just somebody new. And so they don't have that inherent support. They're hoping they get it for sure, but they don't know who has their back. You have to have a pretty thick skin in some respects, right? Because a lot of things get said and done that aren't even necessarily personal, but everything gets directed at you. I'd love for you to just talk a little bit more about that support and what structures were in place. I guess the big question is, where did that support come from?
Right. I've been fortunate, I think, throughout my career. The leadership roles were not something that I set out thinking when I started on this education path that I would be pursuing. And I've often been lucky enough to have some people who saw potential in me and encouraged me and guided me and supported me through making some of these leadership decisions. But you're right about the thick skin. I am one that, always wants to try to make the best decisions I can for people. So even with thick skin, it still bothers you at some times. But I've had some people just help me understand that at the end of the day, we're making decisions for kids. And if those decisions are in the best interest of kids and we know all of the reasons and justifications, then we have to let go some of that other stuff and realize, or I've come to realize that people can make assumptions when they don't know the whole story, and there's no way people can truly understand the whole story if they aren't in it. So we just lead from there. For this particular role, I was fortunate to have the opportunity, and it was very unexpected to step into this role in the interim while they were waiting to hire someone. And I got to meet with the directors on a more kind of intimate level. I had known them anyway in my previous role, but to really work directly with them and see how they were going to wrap around and support me as they support others as well throughout the process. So that was really encouraging. And to the point when I had said to them, because I'm always about being transparent and honest, that I wasn't sure whether I would continue or put my name forth. They were extremely supportive then. That's when they said, "Look, we're gonna do whatever we can to help you get through this." And at that moment, I knew I had them.
Yeah.
On PEI, we also have a unique opportunity. We work really closely with the ministry as well. So the deputy minister, she was new to her role at the same time I became new to the role. So we developed a good relationship, and I could see very quickly that she also wanted to do what was best for education and was willing to hear what our challenges were and what our successes were and to help us through it. So the final layer of that was the principal group. We are fortunate. We meet once a month with our principal group. We're small enough to do it, so we meet in person. And they were really encouraging and really saying that they felt they needed me to take this on at this moment in time when we were experiencing some change. So when you have all of those people rallying behind you, you know you've got a solid team to work through this together and collaboratively. So that in the end is what helped me make that final decision.
Oh, wow. I mean, just yeah, the way you've described that, you're ready to go if everyone's encouraging along that path. And again, maybe you didn't get everybody, but the way in which you gained that support certainly sets you up for success. I also wonder, as you were speaking about, you've identified yourself as a bit of a reluctant leader here. I don't know that this was the first thing in my mind. And it's interesting after having interviewed a number of superintendents that women seem to have more of that disposition that they're not asking for these positions, but they've shown through their work that they have the right stuff, they have the skills, and people want them to, but they need that. And I don't, I mean, listen, I don't want to try to make any big statements here. I'm just finding it interesting and curious, but I also think about the longevity. And again, I'm thinking specifically of some of women who have been in these positions for a while. It seems like they have asked for and required more of a team collaborative effort moving forward, as opposed to a situation where it's like, I don't know if I have everybody's blessing on this, but I'm just going to go ahead, which is just the way that it is sometimes. It's just difficult to gain that. I think you're also fortunate to live in a community and a part of the country where maybe that's just more of the culture of that. I don't know if I'm saying anything because when you mentioned the deputy minister, I'm just wondering if there's some similarities there in terms of some reluctancy to lead, but if I've got a community behind me, yes, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think you're bang on there. I'm very much and always have been that we work together as a team. And even when I was a principal of a school, I was very insistent that we realize we are all equally important. There is no job in that building that is any more important than the other. And that's how I've always operated is, we're here together. And without the whole team, we're not going to have success. So I'm only ever interested in taking on a leadership role. And I've been in multiple, but this one in particular, where, I was only interested if I knew we were going to work together as a team and go forward as a team, because as an individual, you can't make an impact.
I
And
love that.
I look at it that way and say, if I can't offer anything that make an impact, then, I'm going to lead from where I am as opposed to putting myself out a little bit more. I'm also ironically a little bit, people wouldn't know this about me, but I'm a little bit shy to have myself out there in front of that big of an audience. I like to kind of lead from the side or behind and let other people shine. And I knew stepping into this role, I would probably be more of a public face than I had been in my other roles. So that was a little bit of a
Sure.
challenge for me to get past as well.
Well, a lot of the things that I've read too, I think initially, particularly when we're younger and learning about leadership, I think we have a false impression that leaders are always very extroverted and charismatic. And when you read about great leaders, that's not always necessarily the case. There's often a lot of great leaders who, like yourself, yeah, that's what makes them a great leader. They like to put other people in the spotlight. They like other people to shine, but they're still orchestrating many of these kinds of scenarios, but they don't necessarily have to have that. I think that's a good thing that we've all, that we've discovered that there's not a cookie cutter template to help good leaders. And I'm sure you see that within your principal group, even as they all have different skill sets and not all of them are cut out of the same mold, and finding what of those strengths they can lean into is probably what serves them well. But thinking about PEI specifically, and again, that's kind of my goal of this podcast is to help people understand the depth and breadth of education across Canada. PEI is, this little cute little like has all these ideas around what PEI is because of tourism, and those of us who have been fortunate enough to be there have a very probably a thin slice and maybe not a purely accurate perspective of what life and what PEI culture is all about. To what degree could you describe PE education in general that might say it's not exactly like, even other maritime provinces, and certainly not like the rest of Canada? What makes PEI education unique?
I think because we're small, we do have a very tight community group. Every school is the kind of hub of the community. We always joke and say that in the rinks because we have a rink in every community as well.
Right.
But the schools are very much important in each area. And with that, we have the parent engagement and the parent involvement as much as can be possible. And when I say that, it doesn't matter where we are in our country right now, we're experiencing some of the challenges that we went through with COVID, and then the cost of living now is big. So people do truly want to be part of their child's future, be part of their education, and engage in ways that they can. But it's becoming a little bit more difficult for some people to be present all the time because of the work expectations. But even saying that, when I think of our schools, we are a place where kids go to be safe. We offer free breakfast programs. So these are beyond the educational piece, but free breakfast for everybody. We have free lunch program or pay as you go for everybody. And these require volunteers. These require our staff stepping up to help support these programs through it. So we do see the community embracing and stepping up to help support in those ways. We also are very fortunate that we're small in that when we have new curriculum, our Department of Education can pull teachers from all over the province together. So we're developing a network across our province, and not only in this, like that smaller ecosystem of a school and a small community. So we have that opportunity, which I feel is so valuable when we're looking at going forward and supporting each other through all of this. We are a province, though, that is growing in diversity like no other. And that is pretty impressive when we see we're a little province, but we essentially have the world living in our province right now. And that has helped us grow and understand other cultures. And we're still looking at growing and supporting, but I feel that that has been a huge impact on our education system as well here in the province. And it doesn't matter what school I go to. Out of the 56, every single one of them has the same thing. It's supporting their community, supporting their students, and people are genuinely there to make a difference and have a positive impact on the lives of students. And really focus now is on social emotional well-being.
Right.
And you can see that coming through in every school that you step into, which is pretty impressive.
I think living in Saskatchewan, that small town and the rink thing, that that had been a big part, but one of the things here that maybe not happening there to the same degree is those little communities are going away here. They're just not there anymore. So, whereas I think PEI is growing in a different way. And I was just curious to know when you say 56 schools, what is the farthest school away from you?
Tip to tip, we would have 150 kilometers, I guess, from one school to the
Yeah.
other. And I'm kind of in the central part of it. However, I drive probably an hour a
Yeah.
day to my office
Yeah.
every day as well.
Wow.
So, yeah, when I am out visiting schools, it can generally take me an hour and a half, maybe a little bit more to get to some of the furthest schools from where I'm
Yeah.
located.
I think people have the idea that this island concept is means it's very small, and I guess small is a relative term, but I mean that distance is not something that a lot of school districts outside of maybe some of Saskatchewan and northwestern Ontario and some of those places would have those kinds of driving distances. That's something to consider too. So in your career, whether it's the current position you had or previous iterations you had in schools and so forth, obviously part of being a leader is facing challenges. Can you just maybe think about a challenge? It could be something that you're proud of that you handle, or maybe one that you maybe wish you would have handled differently. But a challenge that comes to mind when you think about your career and leadership.
For me, probably if I even look at the one currently we are experiencing, it's the accessibility or the feeling of needing to be accessible 24/7 right
Mhm.
now. And that is something that I continue to struggle with. And it's been part of this leadership role for a long time. When people reach out, you want to be able to respond. And I'm seeing that in a lot of leaders in our system actually right now, and leaders from the principal or vice principal group to the directors that I work most closely with at the district level. And it's a challenge because we're not able to really find that work life balance that we need to have. And I'm really good at telling people you need to have your oxygen mask on first before you can help others. And I'm good at reminding them that, as leaders, we want to take care of our people, but we need to make sure we take care of ourselves before we'll be able to take care of them to the best of our ability. But that is something that I'm still continuing to struggle with, even within myself. Easy to say,
Yeah.
difficult to do, but something that I feel we need to get much better at modeling for
Yes.
our people. And that's
Yeah.
something that I'm still trying to work on.
I'm so glad you raised that because you're probably not the only person, but you're one of the first people that I've talked to who have identified that. But I've seen it in other leaders who I guess after a while you hopefully you felt your rhythm and there's some people who they might like to work a little bit into the evening. That's their way. Or some people like to get up really early and do that. But you're right. I think modeling to people that like, hey, this weekend I didn't do anything. I went skiing or I went for a hike or I just spent time with my family and I didn't do anything about work. I think previously, and I've worked in those situations where the reverse is true, where every leader brags about how much time they spend outside of work. And I don't know if say me brag, but they just talk about it. Oh yeah, I spent the weekend going through this, or I spent these evenings doing this. And so if you're the person that maybe chose to take time for yourself, now you're feeling a little bit guilty. Oh, I guess I should have been working all night. So I think to your point, I think it's so powerful for leaders to say, no, like you have to do that. So I love that you're intentionally and consciously calling it out and knowing that, yeah, it's still a struggle. You can say that all you want, but when a trustee is calling you at 7:30 at night, you probably feel compelled at sometimes to, well, I better take this call because they work during the day too, and this is the time when they want to chat about whatever. And so just that's just the way it is. I wish you continue success in that specific endeavor and that challenge, and probably knowing that you may never get it quite right, but you're working towards something that'll
Yeah.
sustain you. And if you want to be in this role for any length of time, got to do that. This episode is brought to you by Advanced Learning Partnerships, also known as ALP. We are a professional learning consulting group that serves communities across North America. We are partners, designers, and agents for change. You can learn more about the work we do at alplearn.com. And now back to the show. When you look back at your journey and you think about new leaders, you think about young people who think about entering into whether it's a principalship or district leadership or whatever other leadership role, what advice would you give them at a young age? Like, here's what you need to think about if you're planning to spend a career in this part of education.
I think for me, the most important thing that I would want them to know is they can't be a leader by themselves. They can't do it alone, and they don't have to have all of the answers all of the time. And giving them that advice and that permission, I feel will set them up for a lot more success. I think of a couple of books that I had read. Shackleton's Way was one, and then the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and how one of the messages that I took from those is that it's important as a leader to know your own strengths, and it's really important to know the strengths of the team around you so that you can surround yourself with those people who have those strengths that you may not. And it's okay to lean on others and to build up their leadership potential, because that will kind of essentially lift your lid as well and lift your leadership potential. And I think it's really important for anyone getting into leadership to know that, and that it is okay to embrace the supports of the people around them. And the other piece of advice is you should never stop learning, and you should never stop listening to different perspectives. Because if you're surrounding yourself with people who think like you and who have the same skills as you, you're missing a whole big piece of that leadership pie that is so critical to moving forward. So I think those are basically the two pieces of advice that I would want to give to future leaders.
Again, you're speaking my mind. When people say, "Well, what are your strengths?" My network. I have so many wonderful people in my life who are way smarter than me in a lot of in everything, but in like you to your point, in different things that I don't have understanding of or skill set in, but I know them and I feel very fortunate to have those people that I can call on when I don't understand how do I navigate something in indigenous education. I have people that I can reach out to and trust that have a way more expertise than I do and can answer those questions in whether it's wellness or whatever the thing is. So yeah, I love that, and that's something that I think maybe young leaders might struggle with because they feel like they've got to work to prop themselves up as experts and knowing. And sure, like yeah, you're building your own skills and strength, but your strength should be all the people that you can bring along in your journey that says, I got people that have my back. Like, I mean, you've just described that so much before. So, oh, I love what you're sharing, Tracy.
Thank
Also
you.
wanted to ask you, what are you most proud of in the work that you're doing right now?
Well, I always go back to the people. The leadership team that we have, and when I talk leadership team, I'm talking like from the administration at the school level to the teachers in the classroom to the directors at the district level and managers. Like we really do have an incredible team here who really collaborate with each other. But the thing I'm most proud of is wrap around each other. That's when we see challenges happen. We had run into a situation, some unfortunate situations in December. And to see the school communities from tip to tip wrapping around these schools who had experienced tragedy and loss was quite incredible. They absolutely put their needs aside to put the needs of others who were suffering at that moment in time ahead. And to me, when you have a system that is willing to do that for each other, that is what makes me the most proud. You mentioned the word trust, and it's big, and to know that people knew you're going to be supported, you'll get what you need, but you're giving up something right now to help another. That's what PEI is about, and that's probably what I'm most proud of.
We all know those situations where bad things happen, and it's an opportunity really for people to shine. And, listen, we don't wish the bad thing on anybody or anything, but when we can look back and say that was the good that came out of it, I mean, that's just part of the human experience. Like we're not getting out of this world without bad stuff happening. But if the
Exactly.
bad stuff that happens comes with us growing as a community and showing each other really how much we do care about one another and the sustainability of that over time. Maybe once the bad times have passed and you're trying to move forward and progress and do new things, you've built social capital that is very priceless. And yeah, I think many districts and many leaders, Tracy, would be enviable of you to have that kind of a backing of people. So again, there's a theme through this conversation that I think is so important. And so continuing in this vein of people and acknowledging, I've been asking this question because I just love hearing people's very specific answers. So we've been talking pretty broadly about community and all the people that are in your life, but now I want you to get very specific, and I want you to name a person that you're grateful for. And this could be a person that you're currently working with or in your world right now. It could be a person from your past experience, but ideally, I'd love it to be somebody that who could listen to this. I could tag them in a post and they would listen and hear their name said in this kind of shout out. So who might you shout out today? And I know it's hard. There's 100 people, 1,000 people that you could name. I get it. But today we're just going to talk about one. Who would that be?
Right. You're absolutely right. There's so many names that come to my mind. Right now at this moment in time, I probably would have to say Norbert Carpenter. And Norbert is similar in a sense to his path was similar to mine. And he was an elementary school principal at the opposite end of the island than me. And we both became admin support leaders at the same time. And that was where we went to work at the board level and supported administrators in certain families of schools. And then he became the director, much like me, tapped on the shoulder and went in and he assumed that role. And I'm really grateful for our friendship that we developed along our path of working together. But most specifically, he's been my cheerleader with assuming this director role at a permanent level and is still someone, even though he's changed roles. He's a deputy minister right now himself. He still connects with me regularly and is still there for me when I just need someone to talk to, when I need some advice and some guidance. And his philosophy in education would closely align with mine. So to have him still there, and I know he's incredibly busy, but to still be there for me is quite I'm very appreciative of him and all that he's had to offer me along the way.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I love it. I just love learning about those kind of people who are making a difference in your life, and I'm sure he knows that he's appreciated, but I'm glad that you've articulated here that that's awesome. Well, let me head to the last sort of part of our conversation, which is usually a little bit lighter, although these are all just great things. You've already kind of touched on this, but I asked people what they're reading, what they're listening to, so you can utilize the ones you already shared, or if there's something else on that list that's keeping the learning going, what it would that be?
Currently, right now, I'm doing a book study with my director group on Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. So I've read a lot of Simon Sinek's work, Brene Brown, Carol Dweck, those
Right,
individuals and authors. So we're working through that book study right now with that particular group. But me, more specifically, I'm just picking up the book, The Gift of Failure, right now to read as well. And my hope with some of this is that perhaps we can start flooding social media with some little tidbits and some, things for people, our parents particularly, to take away and think about from all of these authors that we've read. And just give them a little bit of a piece of what we're learning and
right.
how we could work together to help support their students or their children, our students, through this journey right now as we try to navigate all the challenges with social media. It's important for us to kind of work together and to share those positive pieces of advice so we can hopefully continue that more positive movement and pull people away from the negative platform that they've been using, like the social media for.
Yeah, nice. So in your efforts to disconnect, in your efforts to sort of get away from things a bit, do you have any guilty pleasures, things that you watch? Doesn't have to be guilty pleasures. I never quite know how to frame that. What I want people to say is like, tell me something that you watch. It's not as intellectual or potentially as cognitively heavy as maybe some of the books you're reading. So, is there something you like watching on streaming or whatever that is kind of a fun getaway?
Sure. For my pleasure of reading, I probably read more than I even watch TV, but it would be more those romantic suspense.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
my family would say, "Oh, the Hallmark Channel at times." That to me is I already know what's gonna happen. Any problem is not gonna be a big problem and it's all gonna end up happy ever after, but it's kinda just my mindless
Right.
kinda opportunity to just not even think and just enjoy that moment.
That's exactly what those are designed for, right? There's enough bad things going on in the world that I don't need.
That's
My wife and I are watching because she likes all the crime shows, and I don't mind some of them too, but like we're watching, I can't remember, it was True Detectives or something, and it's just so heavy. We both
is
looked at each other and just said, like, I don't know if we need this. It's not that you can't have mysteries and things like that as part of that, but sometimes it just crosses a line just for your own. Like, that's too much for me. I can't take that anymore. So the Hallmark
exactly.
ones, like you said, like, I don't have to worry at any point. There's nobody gonna get murdered in those shows or anything
No,
like that. It's all gonna work
no,
out. And sometimes
yes,
we just need to know it's all gonna be okay.
exactly, exactly.
So my last question is, listen, PEI is world renowned for tourism and Anna Green Gables and the bridge and the red sand beaches and so forth. But what would be something in PEI or specifically where you are that people should, hey, I know you'll do all of these other things, but don't forget, maybe you want to spend time here or seeing something. So, what is that lesser known spot that people should pay attention to when they make the trek over to the island?
Well, my favorite spot, I do have to say, I live pretty close to the bridge. It's I can see it out my kitchen window. And people come to PEI and Cavendish Beach, for instance, or those national beaches, parks, and whatnot are kind of where they gravitate to. But my favorite place, and I could encourage anybody, is we're surrounded by water. And the best place is just to go walk along a shore that is lesser known. and lesser populi like, there's just not as many people,
Hmm.
and enjoy that. There's even though I can see the water, walking on the shoreline or walking on the Confederation Trail, those are opportunities where all the worries, all the stresses just seem to wash away. And there's no cost to get into them, but there is a great advantage for just disconnecting and appreciating nature as you walk there. And along where I am, we can walk pretty much right under the Confederation Bridge or right up to it if the tide is in a bit more. And those opportunities, it's amazing how much it just washes away a lot of your problems if you just get by the water. So my advice is don't go to the commercial places. You can find a shoreline and a beach anywhere on this island, and those are often what I call those hidden treasures
Yeah.
when nobody else is there, just you and whoever you're with, your family, to walk along the shore.
Perfect. Tracy, thank you so much for your time. This has been a real pleasure. And again, we've had one conversation, but this one just solidifies the fact that you're somebody that believes and thinks quite similarly to me. And I so admire your approach to leadership. And I wish you all the best with your new role and the work you're doing in PEI.
Thank you. I really appreciate the conversation.